The 13th century. 10 mind-blowing facts about the century that perfected medieval civilization. The 12th century had been medieval Europe's great creative explosion, inventing universities, perfecting Gothic architecture, and establishing the cultural frameworks that defined medieval life. By 1200, European civilization had all the pieces in place: sophisticated political systems, revolutionary architecture, and intellectual institutions that could rival anything since classical antiquity. But here's the thing about medieval overachievers. They never stopped at good enough. The 13th century looked at all those 12th century innovations and said, "Impressive, but watch us take everything you invented and make it absolutely perfect." This wasn't just another century of refinement. This was the century that took medieval civilization to its absolute peak and then kept pushing until it created achievements that wouldn't be matched for centuries. Want proof? Thomas Aquinas systematized all human knowledge into a single theological framework. Innocent III made the papacy the most powerful institution in Europe. Frederick II created the first modern state while writing poetry and conducting scientific experiments. Polo opened trade routes to China. The Mongols conquered half the known world in a single generation. By 1300, medieval Europe had not only perfected its own civilization, but had also established connections with every major culture, from England to Beijing. The sophisticated innovations of 1200 had become the dominant global systems that influenced development from Lisbon to Constantinople to Cairo. Welcome to the 13th century, when medieval civilization decided that mere excellence wasn't ambitious enough and proceeded to achieve absolute perfection. Here are 10 mind-blowing facts about the century that perfected medieval civilization. Fact number 1. Innocent III made the Pope more powerful than any emperor. Pope Innocent III, 1198 to 1216, transformed the medieval papacy from spiritual leadership into supreme political authority that could make and unmake kings, dictate international relations, and control European politics through a combination of religious authority and political genius. Innocent's assertion of papal supremacy wasn't just theoretical. He demonstrated it through direct political intervention. When Philip Augustus of France attempted to divorce his wife, Innocent placed all of France under interdict until Philip submitted. When King John of England resisted papal authority, Innocent declared him deposed and authorized the French invasion of England. The Fourth Lateran Council, 1215, established papal authority over European religious life through systematic reforms that standardized Christian doctrine, required annual confession, and established inquisitorial procedures for dealing with heresy. These reforms made the Pope the effective governor of European spiritual life. Innocent's orchestration of the Fourth Crusade demonstrated papal ability to control European military resources. Although the crusade was diverted to Constantinople, Innocent's ability to mobilize international armies showed that papal authority could rival imperial power. The creation of the Franciscan and Dominican orders under Innocent's guidance established permanent institutions dedicated to papal objectives. These mendicant orders became the Pope's agents throughout Europe, preaching, teaching, and enforcing papal policies in every major city. Innocent's legal innovations established canon law as a complete legal system that could compete with secular law. His decretal collections became the foundation for ecclesiastical jurisprudence that influenced European law for centuries. The financial innovations of Innocent's papacy created revenue systems that made the papal court the wealthiest institution in Europe. Papal taxation, benefice sales, and crusading levies generated resources that exceeded royal treasuries. Innocent's diplomatic achievements included arbitrating disputes between European monarchs, negotiating international treaties, and establishing the Pope as the final authority in European political conflicts. Most importantly, Innocent III established the principle that spiritual authority was superior to temporal power, creating ideological frameworks that influenced European politics until the Protestant Reformation. Fact number 2. Frederick II became the most fascinating person in medieval history. Frederick II of Hohenstaufen, 1194 to 1250, combined Holy Roman Emperor authority with scientific curiosity, poetic genius, and political innovation to create the most sophisticated court in medieval Europe, while simultaneously fighting the Pope, conquering Jerusalem through diplomacy, and conducting scientific experiments. Frederick's court in Sicily was a center of intellectual innovation that attracted scholars from throughout Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. His court combined Christian, Islamic, and Jewish learning in ways that created unique forms of cultural synthesis. The constitutions of Melfi, 1231, established the first systematic legal code since Justinian, creating governmental institutions that balanced imperial authority with practical administration. Frederick's legal innovations influenced European political development for centuries. Frederick's scientific interests included mathematics, astronomy, natural philosophy, and experimental investigation. His correspondence with Islamic scholars advanced European understanding of Aristotelian philosophy and Arabic science. The Sixth Crusade, 1228 to 1229, demonstrated Frederick's diplomatic genius. Despite being excommunicated by the Pope, Frederick negotiated the peaceful return of Jerusalem to Christian control through treaties with the Sultan of Egypt, achieving crusading objectives without military conflict. Frederick's literary achievements included poetry in multiple languages and patronage of troubadour literature that influenced European artistic development. His court became a center of cultural innovation that attracted artists and scholars from throughout the Mediterranean world. The conflict with Pope Innocent IV represented the climax of medieval church-state relations. Frederick's resistance to papal authority created political and theological controversies that influenced European politics for generations. Frederick's administrative innovations created professional bureaucracies that could govern complex territories efficiently. His governmental systems combined imperial authority with local autonomy in ways that influenced European political development. Frederick's international relationships included diplomatic correspondence with Islamic rulers, trade agreements with Italian merchants, and cultural exchanges that connected Europe with broader Mediterranean civilizations. Frederick II demonstrated that medieval rulers could combine political power with intellectual achievement, cultural patronage with military success, and European authority with international diplomacy. Fact number 3. The Mongols created the largest land empire in human history. The Mongol Empire, established by Genghis Khan and expanded by his successors, conquered territories from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, creating political unity across Eurasia that facilitated unprecedented cultural and economic exchange. Genghis Khan's military innovations revolutionized medieval warfare through superior organization, advanced siege techniques, and tactical flexibility that made Mongol armies invincible against traditional European and Asian military systems. The Mongol conquest of China, Central Asia, Persia, and Eastern Europe eliminated existing political boundaries and created trade routes that connected European and Asian civilizations. The Pax Mongolica facilitated cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale. Mongol administrative systems balanced central authority with local autonomy, allowing conquered peoples to maintain cultural traditions while contributing to imperial objectives. This administrative flexibility enabled the Mongols to govern diverse populations effectively. The Battle of Mohi, 1241, and the Battle of Legnica, 1241, demonstrated Mongol military superiority over European armies. Only Ogedei Khan's death prevented Mongol conquest of Western Europe. Mongol religious tolerance created opportunities for cultural synthesis that influenced development throughout Eurasia. Mongol rulers patronized Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Confucianism simultaneously, creating unprecedented religious cooperation. The economic impact of Mongol rule included standardized currencies, protected trade routes, and commercial relationships that connected European and Asian markets. Mongol economic policies facilitated international commerce on an unprecedented scale. Mongol legal innovations combined customary law with administrative efficiency to create governmental systems that could function across diverse cultural boundaries. The Yasa became a legal framework that influenced Eurasian political development. The cultural achievements of Mongol rule included architectural innovations, artistic patronage, and intellectual exchange that influenced development from Europe to China. Mongol courts became centers of international cultural synthesis. The Mongol Empire's fragmentation into separate khanates maintained cultural and economic connections that influenced European and Asian development for centuries after the empire's political unity had ended. Fact number 4. Marco Polo connected Europe to the wealth of Asia. Marco Polo's travels, 1271 to 1295, established direct European contact with Asian civilizations and created commercial relationships that transformed European understanding of geography, economics, and cultural diversity. The Polo family's commercial enterprises demonstrated European entrepreneurial capacity for international trade. Their Venetian merchant network established trade relationships that extended from Constantinople to Beijing. Marco Polo's service in Kublai Khan's administration provided unprecedented European access to Chinese governmental systems, cultural practices, and technological innovations. His experience in Mongol administration gave him unique knowledge of Asian political systems. The economic opportunities identified by Marco Polo's travels revolutionized European commercial thinking. His descriptions of Asian wealth, spices, and luxury goods created European demand for Asian products that influenced international trade for centuries. Marco Polo's geographical knowledge corrected European misconceptions about Asian geography and established accurate understanding of trade routes, political boundaries, and cultural differences between European and Asian civilizations. The technological innovations described by Marco Polo, paper money, printing, gunpowder, and advanced navigation, introduced Europeans to Asian technological achievements that would revolutionize European development. Marco Polo's cultural observations provided European readers with systematic descriptions of Asian religions, social customs, and artistic achievements that expanded European understanding of human cultural diversity. The commercial networks established through Marco Polo's travels created permanent trade relationships between European and Asian merchants that survived political changes and continued to influence international commerce. Marco Polo's written account of his travels became the most influential travel narrative in European literature, inspiring subsequent exploration and establishing European interest in Asian civilizations. Most importantly, Marco Polo's travels demonstrated that European commercial enterprise could succeed in international markets, establishing precedents for European global expansion that would influence world history for centuries. Fact number 5. Thomas Aquinas systematized all human knowledge. Thomas Aquinas, 1225 to 1274, created the most comprehensive intellectual system in medieval history by synthesizing Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology to produce a unified understanding of divine and natural reality that influenced European thought for centuries. The Summa Theologica represented the culmination of medieval intellectual achievement, systematically addressing every major question of theology, philosophy, ethics, and natural science within a single coherent framework. Aquinas' synthesis of Aristotelian and Christian thought resolved the fundamental intellectual crisis of the 13th century by demonstrating that reason and faith were compatible rather than contradictory approaches to understanding reality. The development of scholastic method under Aquinas' influence created systematic approaches to intellectual investigation that became the foundation for European academic tradition. His methodological innovations influenced university education throughout Europe. Aquinas' philosophical innovations included sophisticated analysis of causation, existence, knowledge, and ethics that established foundations for European philosophical development. His philosophical system influenced European thought throughout the medieval and early modern periods. The theological achievements of Aquinas included systematic treatment of divine attributes, sacramental theology, and moral philosophy that became standard Christian doctrine. His theological innovations influenced Christian thought for centuries. Aquinas' integration of natural philosophy with theological doctrine created intellectual frameworks that could accommodate scientific investigation within religious worldviews. His synthesis influenced European scientific development throughout the medieval period. The educational impact of Aquinas' work transformed European university curricula and established intellectual standards that influenced European academic development for centuries. Aquinas' legal and political philosophy established principles of natural law that influenced European political thought and legal development throughout the medieval and early modern periods. Most importantly, Aquinas demonstrated that medieval civilization could create intellectual achievements that rivaled classical antiquity while maintaining Christian religious commitments. Fact number 6. The Cathars forced the Church to invent the Inquisition. The Cathar heresy in southern France became so influential that it threatened to replace Catholic Christianity in entire regions, forcing the Church to develop systematic persecution methods that became permanent features of European religious life. Cathar theology rejected Catholic sacraments, clerical authority, and material creation, offering alternative Christian spirituality that attracted widespread support throughout Languedoc and northern Italy. The Albigensian Crusade, 1209 to 1229, was the first crusade directed against European Christians, demonstrating papal willingness to use military force against internal religious opposition. The crusade devastated southern French civilization, while establishing precedents for religious warfare within Europe. The establishment of the Papal Inquisition, 1233, created permanent institutions for investigating and prosecuting heresy. Inquisitorial procedures became standard methods for maintaining religious conformity throughout Europe. The destruction of Cathar communities eliminated distinctive regional cultures that had maintained independence from French royal authority. The Albigensian Crusade facilitated French political expansion into southern territories. The legal innovations of inquisitorial procedure included systematic investigation, written records, and standardized punishment that influenced European legal development. Inquisitorial methods became permanent features of European jurisprudence. The cultural impact of anti-Cathar persecution included destruction of troubadour literature, architectural monuments, and artistic traditions that had flourished in southern French courts. The theological consequences of the Cathar controversy included systematic development of Catholic doctrine regarding heresy, salvation, and church authority that influenced Christian theology for centuries. The political results of the Albigensian Crusade strengthened French royal power, while demonstrating papal ability to mobilize military resources against internal European opposition. Most importantly, the Cathar persecution established precedents for religious uniformity that influenced European development throughout the medieval and early modern periods. Fact number 7. The universities became medieval Europe's greatest export. The university system created in the 12th century expanded throughout Europe during the 13th century, establishing educational institutions that became more influential than political systems and more permanent than military conquests. The University of Paris became the intellectual center of Europe, attracting students from throughout the continent and establishing academic standards that influenced European education for centuries. The theological faculty of Paris became the supreme authority on Christian doctrine. The development of university curricula standardized European education around systematic study of theology, law, medicine, and liberal arts. University degrees became credentials that provided access to professional careers throughout Europe. The legal innovations of university scholars created systematic jurisprudence that influenced European political development. University-trained lawyers became essential administrators in every European government. The theological achievements of university scholars established intellectual frameworks that reconciled classical philosophy with Christian doctrine. University theology became the standard for European religious thought. The scientific innovations of university scholars included mathematical analysis, astronomical observation, and natural philosophy that advanced European understanding of physical reality. The international character of universities created cultural unity that transcended political boundaries. Students and scholars traveled freely throughout Europe, creating intellectual communities that influenced European development. The economic impact of universities included urban development around educational institutions, commercial relationships that supported academic communities, and professional services that served European governmental needs. The social impact of universities included opportunities for social mobility based on intellectual achievement rather than birth or military service. University education became a pathway to professional success throughout Europe. Most importantly, universities established the principle that systematic education was essential for civilized society, creating institutional foundations that influenced European development for centuries. Fact number 8. The Fourth Crusade accidentally destroyed the Byzantine Empire. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, was diverted from its original objective of recapturing Jerusalem to instead conquer Constantinople, destroying the Byzantine Empire and fundamentally altering the balance of power between Christianity and Islam in the Eastern Mediterranean. The financial arrangements between Crusaders and Venetian merchants created obligations that forced the Crusade to serve Venetian commercial interests rather than religious objectives. Venice used the Crusade to eliminate Byzantine commercial competition. The conquest of Constantinople, 1204, was one of the most catastrophic events in medieval history, destroying the last remnant of the Roman Empire and eliminating the primary Christian power in the eastern Mediterranean. The establishment of the Latin Empire of Constantinople created European political control over Byzantine territories, but lacked the administrative capacity to govern effectively. The Latin Empire survived less than 60 years. The partition of Byzantine territories among Crusader nobles created multiple competing states that were vulnerable to Turkish conquest. The fragmentation of Byzantine power facilitated Ottoman expansion into Europe. The cultural destruction accompanying the conquest of Constantinople included systematic looting of artistic treasures, destruction of libraries, and elimination of Byzantine intellectual traditions that had preserved classical learning. The religious consequences of the Fourth Crusade included permanent schism between Eastern and Western Christianity that eliminated prospects for Christian unity against Islamic expansion. The economic impact of the Fourth Crusade established Venetian commercial dominance in Eastern Mediterranean trade, while destroying Byzantine economic systems that had connected European and Asian markets. The military consequences eliminated Byzantine military capacity to resist Turkish expansion, facilitating Ottoman conquest of Anatolia and eventual expansion into Europe. Most importantly, the Fourth Crusade demonstrated that European religious warfare could be more destructive to Christian civilization than Islamic conquest. Fact number 9. Edward I created the English state that would conquer the world. Edward I of England, 1272 to 1307, transformed England from a medieval kingdom into a systematic state with professional institutions, standardized legal systems, and military organization that became the foundation for eventual English global dominance. The conquest of Wales, 1277 to 1284, demonstrated Edward's capacity for systematic territorial expansion through superior military organization and administrative efficiency. Welsh conquest became a model for English imperial expansion. The Scottish Wars of Independence revealed Edward's imperial ambitions and his systematic approach to territorial conquest. Although ultimately unsuccessful, Edward's Scottish campaigns established patterns of English military organization that influenced later imperial expansion. The legal innovations of Edward's reign included systematic codification of English law, standardization of legal procedures, and establishment of institutional frameworks that could govern complex territories efficiently. The military innovations of Edward's armies included professional organization, standardized equipment, and systematic training that made English military forces superior to traditional feudal armies. The parliamentary developments during Edward's reign established institutional relationships between royal authority and aristocratic consent that became fundamental features of English governance. The economic policies of Edward's government included systematic taxation, commercial regulation, and monetary reform that created financial resources necessary for systematic territorial expansion. The administrative innovations of Edward's government created professional bureaucracies that could govern distant territories efficiently. English administrative systems became models for imperial governance. The cultural achievements of Edward's reign included architectural innovations, legal scholarship, and historical writing that established English cultural identity and imperial ideology. Most importantly, Edward I demonstrated that systematic state organization could achieve territorial expansion and political control that exceeded traditional medieval limitations. Fact number 10. The 13th century proved that medieval civilization had become unstoppable. The most mind-blowing fact about the 13th century is that it demonstrated medieval European civilization's capacity to achieve absolute excellence in every field of human endeavor, while simultaneously expanding its influence throughout the known world. The intellectual achievements of the 13th century, systematic theology, comprehensive legal systems, and institutional education, created frameworks for European thought that influenced Western civilization throughout the medieval and early modern periods. The political achievements, papal supremacy, imperial organization, and systematic state development established governmental institutions that could coordinate complex societies across vast territories while maintaining cultural coherence. The military achievements, crusading organization, systematic conquest, and professional armies demonstrated European capacity for territorial expansion that would eventually encompass global dominance. The economic achievements, international trade, systematic taxation, and commercial organization created financial resources that could support complex civilizations while facilitating cultural exchange across vast distances. The cultural achievements, architectural perfection, systematic scholarship, and artistic innovation established aesthetic standards that defined European civilization while influencing development throughout the medieval period. Most importantly, the 13th century established medieval civilization as the dominant cultural system in Europe, while creating institutional foundations that would influence European development throughout the medieval and early modern periods. By 1300, medieval Europe had achieved systematic excellence in every field of human endeavor, while establishing connections with every major civilization from England to China. The experimental innovations of 1200 had become the dominant global systems that influenced development throughout the known world. The 13th century proved that medieval civilization had matured beyond regional European influence to become a global cultural system capable of influencing development throughout the known world, while maintaining internal coherence and continued innovation.